Do you want me to interject our experience?
When I ask you questions, that means I do want you to interject.
Oh, you do. I interject.
Hi, this is Nam from EC Sunday Club.
With a fresh quarantine haircut. And this is Cathy behind the camera.
And today we're going to talk about how to form a business entity for your art business.
Why are you qualified to teach this subject?
I am kind of qualified because I went to law school and I am a barred attorney. However, this little video is not to give legal advice. It's only for informational purposes. And the reason I have to say that is so you don't sue us and I don't get a bar complaint for unauthorized practice of law. First thing is I'm going to do an intro and I'm going to talk a little bit about the reasons why we form a business entity, which is mainly centered around liabilities and taxes, whether or not you need an attorney to set this up, how to set up a business entity and the fees involved. After that, I'm going to talk about each of the different business entities, but there's really only two that you need, and the rest are just for, again, informational purposes only, just in case your business grows to such a huge amount and you want to pursue those other business entities. Got it?
Got it.
We get a lot of questions about certain artists should form a business entity. I try to gauge how serious they are about their business and their art business at this particular moment. Are they still doing art as a side thing after their full-time job and they're really tired and they don't have a lot of free extra time? Or have they started to do all these different products and different art projects and they're getting a lot of attention and people are purchasing their art products and they want to take it to the next level? So if you're more into that camp, then I would say go ahead and look into a business entity. But if you're still starting out and you're just struggling to make the time to do your art, I say just focus on the freaking art and let that passion continue to develop.
When we first met with an accountant at the very beginning of our business, she asked us how serious we are. Even then, I had given a very conservative estimate that I said it would be great if I could make $10,000 from the art business. And that is around the kind of goal that you've set for yourself. We recommend creating a business entity.
The two most important reasons why you do want to create a business entity is liability and taxes. So what liability means is that if your business takes on debt, then that means that if you don't pay those debts, you can get sued. Or if somehow your painting causes an injury, then you can be sued for that as well. But instead of suing yourself personally for all your money and all your paintbrushes and all your assets, they can sue your company and they can't go after you. So that's what liability means. Taxes is also super important because if you have an entity, then you might get additional tax benefits and are able to write things off and be able to make more money for yourself and not have to give it to Uncle Sam, as opposed to other business entities if it's not formed. The next question I get asked a lot is whether or not we need an attorney to set up a business entity. And my answer most of the time is no, because attorneys are useless. Trust me, I know. I'm pretty useless. You can ask Cathy. The reason why I say attorneys are useless is because they cost so much to do something that legally you can do yourself. You don't need an attorney to set up a business entity. You might need an attorney to set up a really complicated business entity, like if you're making a really big corporation out in the Cayman Islands with tons of shareholders and you need to raise a lot of money and capital for your startup. But let's be honest, this is an art company. This is just something that you're forming as a small business, and it's not that complicated. If I do recommend that you use something, there are different levels that you can use. So the cheapest level is to do it yourself and just research or watch videos like this that can guide you on how to set up your business entity. The next level up is to go on something like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, where they have all these packages of documents that all you have to do is click through and fill out, but they can't give you legal advice. And the third way, which is what I prefer and what I recommend, is to get a business accountant, because you're going to need a business accountant anyway to file your taxes at the end of the year and get the most bang for your buck and have the least tax liability. But they also know what business entity and how to set it up to get the most tax protection. So that's why I recommend going to an accountant. And also, an accountant on an hourly basis is much, much cheaper than a lawyer. And sometimes they know more about the law than a lawyer does. Kind of funny, right? So the next thing is how to set up a business entity. So all you need to do is, depending on what state you live in, is just Google Secretary of State for your state. So for us, it'd be California. And then we go onto the web page. And then here it says corporation formations file online. And from here, they usually have a lot of states right now. They have a little walkthrough that you can go and just file right online. And just for a quick view of what information they want, there's a filing fee that's usually $100. I've seen some that are up to a couple $100. And they're going to ask for a corporate name. At that point, if you have a name for your corporation, you got to make sure that nobody else has that name. Business address, which can be your home address. Agent for service of process. What that means is that if you get sued, there's a person there that can serve paperwork for, that can represent your company. Short way to say, it's pretty simple depending on what state, and I don't think you need an attorney for that. Next, what I'm going to go to is start double clicking on the actual business entities. For each business entity, I'm going to talk a little bit about the definition of what that business entity means, a call out about the liability and tax situation of each entity, and then I'm going to go into some pros and some cons. And I'm going to do this by a really boring PowerPoint presentation, which I know all of you guys love out there. So the easiest business entity and the first business entity that I want to go to, applicable for artists, is something called a sole proprietorship. So a sole proprietorship is an unincorporated business with only one owner. You don't need to file any paperwork to do a sole proprietorship. That's the cool thing. It's just you operating independently, which is pretty much status quo. For taxes, they're pretty simple. You're taxed personally on income owed. Basically, you just file your taxes how you normally tax it, but you're operating as a sole proprietorship business. For liability, liability is bad. You're personally responsible for all debts and liabilities. So if I go to NAM sole proprietorship and I rent a bunch of art equipment and I don't pay back on it, then I can be personally sued, which is bad. The pro of the sole proprietorship is that it's really simple to set up, especially if you're not committal to having an art business yet, and it's simple to dissolve. Also, to make things easier, you can mix company and personal assets. For other business entities, you have to keep the company assets or money separate from your own personal money. Otherwise, you can get into some trouble for mixing all those assets together. And last, your income can be offset by losses from other sources. So let's say that you have several businesses or you have personal losses from real estate that are tied to your individual filing, then they can offset your sole proprietorship business losses. The bad thing about it, like I said, you're responsible for all debt and liability. It's limited on how you can sell equity or raise capital. So you can't sell a piece of your business because your business is just yourself. And you can't deduct certain costs like health insurance. So if you're running your own business and you're the one who's paying for health insurance, it's important that you can get some sort of benefit or write-off for taking on that cost. So again, sole proprietorship, easy to set up, and it's kind of like the level one of any business entity because you don't have to do much. The business entity that I usually recommend to artists, and cutting to the chase, is a limited liability corporation. The reason why is that it is really flexible. So it's a hybrid of a corporation and a partnership. And corporation and partnership, I'll get into those definitions later, but I just wanted to cut to the chase and just talk about this entity because we're going to get to it anyway. So for taxes, you get to choose. You get to be taxed like a C corporation, which means you're double taxed. So for a regular corporation, you're taxed when income comes into the corporation, and you're also taxed again when you get a dividend as an individual shareholder. Or you can be taxed like an S corporation, which means that the corporate entity is just a pass-through. So the money goes to the corporation and then it's passed on to yourself and you're only taxed once. But you get to choose which way you want to get taxed. So that's flexibility, that's good. Again, the next thing is with liability. The liability protection that you have with an LLC is better than sole proprietorship because you don't have personal liability for debts and liabilities of the LLC. So if NAM LLC or Easy Sunday Club LLC rents a bunch of art equipment again and doesn't pay the debt, then they will sue Easy Sunday Club, but they won't sue NAM, and I'll be able to get away with it. So that's great. So again, the pros about the LLC is that although the name corporation is in it, There's not as many corporate formalities compared to C corporation or a S corporation. Those corporations, which I'll get into later, you have all these like filing and governance requirements, where LLC is a lot more simpler because it's for like smaller businesses. And also, again, limited liability, and you get to choose how the LLC is taxed. So the flexibility is what we like the most. The bad thing is that, you do still have to pay a registration fee as opposed to the sole proprietorship where you don't have to pay anything. And another call out is with an LLC, you can have all the tax write-offs. So you can potentially write off benefits. With an LLC, you can also do retirement plans, such as a simple IRA. Simple IRA is much like a Roth IRA, except you can take your non-taxable income that you make from your LLC, you can put into your simple IRA, have that investment grow for your retirement plan. So we decided to form an LLC, and the reason why is because we wanted the liability protection, which we had, and we also wanted the tax benefits of an S-Corp. So we have a pass-through way of taxation, so it goes to our corporation and then passes on to us. And we also have taken advantage of some of the benefits of an LLC. For example, we have business write-offs for business trips and for moving and for costs that we incur.
Also, as a business owner, if you work from home, you can write off part of your rent or mortgage towards business expenses as well. Obviously not the entire amount since you also live there, but that's also a fixed cost that's counted as a business expense legally.
Yeah. And another call out about liability. I mean, if you're running an art business, chances are you're not going to have a lot of liability issues unless you don't pay your debts. So usually people aren't going to be suing you for creating your own original art or something like that, but it's just a good protection or option to have. The next three entities I'm going to talk about are important just to know about, but I'm going to focus on talking about why we didn't choose those and why they don't necessarily make sense for a small art business. So the first one I want to talk about is a partnership. Partnership is a step up from a sole proprietorship, but it doesn't give you the personal liability protection that a corporation does. So a partnership is formed when two or more people start a business with the goal of making a profit. It's basically a pass-through entity. So each partner individually pays taxes on their distribution share. The bad thing on the liability issue is each partner is liable for debt, obligations of the business, and actions of other partners. So for example, if me and Cathy formed a two-person partnership and she went ahead and bought a bunch of art equipment or rented a bunch of art equipment and didn't pay it back, then I myself would be liable and on the hook for it, even though I'm just her partner in this general partnership. It's a big bummer. The good thing about it is that it's really simple to set up and there's less fees and reporting requirements than a corporation. However, what we've seen from a lot of partnerships and knowing some small business owners is that disagreements can and will occur, and they even occur between me and Cathy. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that Cathy's the CEO, so whatever she says goes. But in order to prevent some arguments, it's always good to have a partnership agreement. But I mean, the partnership agreement may as well be written on tissue paper, because if someone doesn't want to do something, they're just not going to do anything. You can point to a piece of paper and nobody cares. And I know this as an attorney. The agreements don't really mean anything.
Oh yes, you remind me of this plenty of times.
Yes. The next thing is the corporation. So a corporation is a business owned by shareholders who elect a board of directors to direct the business. For taxes, they're eligible for more deductions, but they're double taxed on a corporate tax return, and shareholders are taxed on dividends on personal tax return. So not super good from the tax perspective, in my opinion. Owners do not have personal liability for debts and liabilities of the corporation because it is a separate legal entity, which is good. The pro for it is that you can easily transfer a corporation through what they call shares, which is a part ownership of the corporation. Benefits can be deducted as business expenses, and it's easier to raise capital. The bad thing about it is, as a small business owner, there's complex filing requirements, reporting, and governance requirements. You're doing so many things as a small business owner already. To have all these filing requirements on top of that is really frustrating. If you are creating this huge brand design company and you need to bring in money, that's when you can switch over to corporation. But as a small business, doesn't really make sense. The last business entity I want to talk about is an S corporation. So an S corporation is similar to a corporation. It's a business owned by shareholders, usually smaller than a corporation, who elect a board of directors. However, there is no corporate level taxation. This taxation is usually the biggest differential. So as taxes is a pass-through entity. So S corporation's profits and losses pass through to the owner's personal tax returns like sole proprietorship. However, they have the liability protection. Owners do not have personal liability for debts and liabilities of the S-Corp because it is a separate legal entity. The benefit, no double taxation and limited liability. Yay! However, the bad thing is that there's still complex filing requirements, reporting, and governance guidelines and fees. But there are more limits on issuing S-Corp stock versus C-Corp. If you want any more information about business entities or which one you want to do, there's tons of resources and rabbit holes you can go down. But this is just a kind of an overview of all the business entities and our preference for the one that a small business should go for, which is either sole proprietorship or an LLC. Thanks for joining us on Easy Sunday Club. If you want to support us, feel free to smash that subscribe button and you can follow for additional updates. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Please subscribe.